This is CyberPodEU, the European cybersecurity podcast powered by Sockwise.
So basically changing the law in a way that there is no problems of exchanging information and cooperating across states through the federal level is a very good step. I think you get more bang for the buck when you actually focus on resilience other than active cyber defense or hackback operations.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our new episode of CyberPodEU. Today I'm very glad to welcome Sven Herpig as my guest. Sven has a ton of experience in the cybersecurity field, especially when it comes to state security in the cyberspace. He is the head of international cybersecurity policy for the Stiftung Neue Verantwortung, so the new responsibility in Germany. And additionally, he is, among others, part of the advisory board BSE Congress and advisory board member of the EU Cyber Diplomacy Initiative, so the European Union Cyber Direct. I think that there is no doubt that Sven has a ton of experience in the cybersecurity sector. But hello, Sven. I'm really happy to have you here. How are you today?
Greg, thanks for having me. No, it's a beautiful day. I'm really happy to be invited here to talk with you a bit about German and maybe international cybersecurity policy.
Definitely. Thank you very much. We always try to find the right experts in the German market or from the German market, but also from European level as well. And in the cybersec or even the whole IT sector, we are constantly talking about the increasing complexity of systems and compliance frameworks, which makes it difficult to manage them. In order to keep the overview, the Stiftung Neue Verantwortung started an ambitious project by mapping the security architecture and the network of state-related cybersecurity actors in the German state. And I found this is an amazing job. But on the other hand, it seems pretty, sorry to say that, it's a boring job for many. Reading hundreds of regulations, discussing really abstract questions with experts who use hundreds of acronyms and know very well their own operations, but maybe they are not aware that we don't know them so much as they do. So, and you are also an open-minded person, as I already learned. You are interested in the technology. You are aware of different aspects as well. So it would be made for many people a more intensive subject to learn. But however, you seem to cope very smoothly with this challenge of philosophic deep dives. So I wanted to ask you if you can disclose or reveal what's your personal strategy to keep, so to say, the fire within your soul. So how you keep your interest when it's so energy using this kind of activity? No?
No, Greg, I think it's a great question because I think the main motivation behind what we're doing is that we, like my team, we try to make German cybersecurity policy better, also by pushing the government to their limits by asking uncomfortable questions. And this overview that we created wasn't only me, it was my team, and that we are constantly updating. We just launched the last update last week. Mm-hmm. We try to bring that together. And as you said, it's maybe not an intellectual masterpiece. I do reckon that. It is more what we like to call bread and butter policy work. I mean, there's hours and hours of time going in there researching, looking where it goes. But honestly, I believe that this is the basics that you need to do to improve cybersecurity policy. If you're not willing or you're not able to do these basics, then I don't think that you can build on it. And even the most complex problem or the complexest solution needs some fundament. And I think what we are doing here is just creating a fundament for other initiatives, for certain policy discussions, where other stakeholders can just look at it and take away what they need from what we provide and make their policies better. And that's what basically keeps me motivated, seeing it pop up everywhere in presentations and basically people acknowledging our hard bread and butter policy work for what it is.
Okay, thank you. I must admit I really enjoyed reading it, and this infographic or the visualization which you did is amazing for me as well. And I can also advise people, not just from Germany, but from any state of the EU to take a look, because I think it's also an example. Actually, I've never seen such a well-prepared background material. And it's for me personally, what helped the most is that you can find every kind of organizations from NATO or EU aspects, including Germany, in which a very well summarized short description is available for when you try to find that this and that European level actor is what actually they are doing. Then you will find potentially at least a 10 pages long description what they are doing, but you were able to summarize it, and I think it describes very well their operations. So I like that very much. Okay, so it was a huge project. I can even see that behind you there is a version of the map you created, which I just mentioned. So can you tell a bit more about the project and how it started? And I think it has a long history, but maybe we should start from 2018 or 17, which you prefer.
Yeah, basically it goes a bit more back even when I was still working with the German government. I started writing down all the policies and all the stakeholders that kind of make up Germany's cybersecurity architecture. And of course, that working there was never a possibility to publish it or even pursue it further. It was just a side project. So when I joined the Stiftung Neue Verantwortung in 2017, and we had some spare time at our hands, we said, like, hey, well, this is some basic that doesn't exist, and I really wanted to do it. So first thing is we basically mapped it out on the wall with threads and post-it notes and everything. We invited stakeholders from the industry and academia and government over to have a workshop on that. And then it slowly developed in what it is now in this 200 whatever page PDF file with this visualization. And then I would say the last evolution was that we added some categories, like, is it an operative cybersecurity actor, or is it just for policy, or is it a training institution? And we also added, with help of our data science team, an interactive visualization. So now you can go to our website, you can click it, and it shows you all the connections and everything. So we try to constantly develop this further. And I think a goal for the next couple of years is also to run it through some data science analysis and see if there are some things we can learn from all the data that we provided that we haven't seen before. So that is basically something that we do on the side, but we're very happy and of course very proud of what we have accomplished in those years.
I believe that, and you can be very proud of that. I agree, and it sounded interesting when you started to do it on a wall. How large was it? I mean, you needed more than, 300 post-its, I guess, or more if I look at the map.
Oh, we actually started very small. We just wanted to map only the federal level, but that was already like, I think 4 meters by 3 meters or something. And I remember that evening when I glued like the different colored threads on the post-its and then tried to pin it to the wall. It was a fun experience.
Yes, so how I've understood it, you don't need to read the whole stuff. No one will read the whole report. But if you are looking for example, you are in contact with a federal or a state level organizations, you will very quickly be aware of their connections and the regulations regarding this organization. Is that correct?
That's very much correct. And I think what we benefit from is also that it has reached such a status that these organizations basically come to us. They read our publication, also not everything, just mostly their own entries. And then if there's something that is not correct, they will email us and say like, hey, we wanted this corrected, but in a very nice way, because they know that a lot of people are reading this. So they want to have their correct functions and roles represented there, which is actually very nice because it saves us a lot of work.
Yes, I've seen also that you've got a bug bounty type of project, for example, in use, which is very professional and up to date. So I just encourage everyone to take a look at the map on your web page. Actually, it's easy to find, SNV web page, and then people can also donate, which is, I think, regarding all the activities of your organization, it's fair to ask people to do that. So, what were the biggest changes in the last updated version? There are also new organizations, I guess, but you just mentioned the new level or layer you added.
Yeah, the last version, the 9th version, basically what we did is we went through the entire federal and local levels in Germany and updated all of that, added new institutions that were created in the meantime or that we have overlooked, that people mentioned to us. And we updated also our interactive visualization, which now is fully functional. So you don't only see the connections between stakeholders, but you also see all the text and what the function is when you click it. And I think what might be interesting for the listeners, Greg, is that we are planning to publish a 10th version in spring. And one of our main goals for that version is to update and consolidate all the actors on the European level.
Oh. Mm-hmm. That is going to be extremely helpful. Do you know any other similar work within EU or any similar in Germany? I doubt that, but on EU level, I've never seen, to be honest, but maybe I don't know it.
Well, there's a couple of approaches. So the German government in 2019 tried to do their own version, and I think they spent tons of money on external consultancy companies, and they created one version and then never updated it again. So that's pretty sad. And well, if you ask me, maybe a waste of taxpayers' money. But it was a very good overview. It's just sad that it's not updated anymore. I think ENISA, the European Cybersecurity Agency, also created something similar for the EU level at some point. I'm not sure if it's actually available online. And I had a
maybe not.
Maybe not exactly,
because I was looking for it. That's why I'm asking. There is text-based information which is pretty hard to work with. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I think I have seen it in some presentation or so, but it was also just like a couple of boxes. And I had a recent discussion with our American counterparts, and they were like, "Well, we also want something like this." so apparently they also don't have that.
That should be a hell of a job, because the US is pretty complex from that aspect.
True.
But you also know that, if I recall right, you've got some experience from the US, at least from your studies. So we've got a section within the podcast which is called the headline of the week.
Headline of the week.
We found an article from Sueddeutsche Zeitung this week. So let me summarize the headline of the week. This is cybersecurity wish list. So the German Federal Minister of the Interior, Nancy Faeser, presented her plan for the defense against cyber attacks. In order to do that, Faeser proposed to strengthen the competences of the German state, as well as a change of the constitution. Especially the Federal Office for Information Security, so BSI, is supposed to get more competences. Right now, the responsibility is lying before the German states. Faeser claims that this is not contemporary to meet current threats. Especially the outdated German information technology is a threat to the cybersecurity of critical infrastructure and government agencies. Another reason for centralizing the competencies is that many authorities mean that decisions are time-consuming and are often too late when a cyber attack is launched. Also, small and middle-sized companies should get funding for investing in cyber resilience. Before asking about that, I think you sometimes are positively critical regarding such articles. Do you think that it really covers the reality of the current actions or will of the German government?
If you ask about the current will of the government, I would say yes. If you ask about the actions, I'm not so sure yet.
Okay, thank you. I am just adding a favorite opinion. Actually, it's international, I guess. So if my car is stolen or I am robbed on the street, the police will work very hard to catch the perpetrator and bring them to jurisdiction. But in cyber world nowadays, it is more like the Wild West or the medieval age, in my eyes at least. So everyone carries bodyguards and armor, sometimes even guns or swords with themselves. So what is your opinion on this? So what do you think? It's a good step to centralize the responsibilities on one hand, or at least what is the Verantwortung, so the responsibility of the state regarding this new cyber age?
So a couple of things, Greg. So I'm not the biggest fan of analogies, but I'm gonna jump in on that. I think in the end of the day, you're also responsible. If you bike down the street, that you wear a helmet and maybe have functioning brakes and everything and get it checked. But if someone runs you over, then you go to the police if you still can, of course, and then that they have their task. So in IT security, I think it's very similar. So you will have to acknowledge the subsidiarity principle, which basically means that you have to do something for yourself on the lowest level, and then if we go up the ladder, maybe other stakeholders get involved. So you have to expect multinational companies to protect themselves against cyber criminals, and to a certain degree also against intellectual espionage operations. But you cannot expect a small and medium enterprise to protect itself against, well, let's say, for example, Russian intelligence services. That's when you need the support of the government. So I think back to the question of centralized is good or bad, I think the German cybersecurity architecture is in certain ways already centralized. Like you have the National Cyber Defense Center, which centralizes a lot of operational things, at least the information exchange, or is supposed to do that. On the strategic policy level, you have the National Cybersecurity Council, which is supposed to do that. Both organizations don't work super well, but at least they are there. So with BSI, I think it makes a lot of sense, because all the different German states are now developing their own cybersecurity agencies, legislation, and policies. And of course, they cannot cover everything. So it makes a lot of sense to exchange information and services with each other, and centrally through the federal level across the BSI, the National Cybersecurity Agency. So basically changing the law in a way that there is no problems of exchanging information and cooperating across states through the federal level is a very good step.
Okay, that sounds good. So regarding BSI, their current responsibilities are already growing. Just if I take a look at the SIG 2.0, so that's the new cybersecurity standard in Germany, which have an important deadline, for example, next May for this so-called Angriffserkennung. So actually a behavior analytics like of tools to use for the critical infrastructures. The new NIS2 directive is coming and being, and then that will bring more and more responsibilities and tasks for the BSI. So do you also think that they can cope with it? So let's say grow in terms of human resources, complexity of operations. How do you know them?
I mean, I left 2016, and I think they doubled their staff between 2016 and now. So I think they are up to the task. I think they have a lot of expertise in-house, which of course supports if they get a new responsibility or new power or whatever. Of course, they don't have to start from the scratch. They have a lot of people in-house who already have expertise in adjacent fields and everything. So I think they're up to the task. But if not, then we have to make them be up to the task, because these policies, including also the draft now on the EU level of the Cyberesilience Act, these are all things which make sense and are good to improve our overall cybersecurity level. So if the National Cybersecurity Agency is up for the task or not, that is not really the big question. The big question is, or the challenge is that we have to make it fit enough to be up for the task, because the task is coming, and if it's going to be implemented well, we're all going to benefit from it.
I fully agree, and I think, it's revealing that you say that. I mean that the BSI is in a good, at least starting position for the new legislations or the new tasks. If I take a look at the Hungarian state level, it's lagging behind. Despite that, if I just take examples from the private sector, I see I would say too much similarities between the eastern states within the European Union and the western states, because of the family-based businesses, for example, never really became ready to face these new challenges, and they didn't really get support for that from the states. So each and every state now the centralized act, which is coming, I think will help us a lot, but also makes a huge pressure on us, on all of us. Yeah.
So I think that's a very important point that you're raising there, Greg. It is the small and medium enterprise, the family businesses there, they haven't done much and they don't get support from the government. I think that's something that we fundamentally overlooked in the last years, which is the government basically says like, okay, well, we are providing you information like newsletters, like warnings, like bulletins, and the rest is up to you. And that's understandable. You make money. You're a private business, you make money, so you protect yourself up to a certain degree. But what we've seen in the last 10 years, 15 years is that this system is not working. So now we can, of course, say, well, the government's saying, well, we do all we can. And the businesses say, well, you're not doing enough. We can be there and can be perfectly fine with that status quo. But that means that we are losing millions and millions of euros every year from our economy. So we can try to find new ways to mitigate this, or we both be right and continue on the losing path. And I think that's something that we have to acknowledge and decide whether we want to do something about it or not.
I agree. If we go back to this example we brought up, it's like if the police would help you to practice martial arts instead of protecting you. But I know it's a silly, oversimplified example, but at least funny. So in your talk on our SOCWISE event in April, SOC Summit, you provided a very interesting insight into the German cybersecurity landscape. And during your talk, you were talking also about this Strategieunfähigkeit, so the incapability of strategy, and you also, I think, we're talking about new organizations coming up or bigger changes. Did they really take place? So since then, since April, what happened so far?
Yeah, I kind of stand corrected. It's a bit disappointing what we've seen so far, because we haven't seen a lot. I mean, the Ministry of the Interior launched their cybersecurity agenda, which is just another policy document which reiterates things that have been discussed in other strategic documents. So honestly, you don't even know which strategic document is now the most current version or not. It's a bit, it's not confusing. It's just chaotic, honestly. And we have the discussions that you just summarized from that news article. We have the discussion that we need a constitutional change to enable the centralized function of the National Cybersecurity Agency. We also have that constitutional discussion around the topic of active cyber defense operations. So these are the things that until now in the political debate, we might see some movement there this autumn. But between April and now, honestly, not much happened, at least not to the positive.
Unfortunately, there was summer in between. In politics, it shouldn't mean that much, and there is still the war ongoing. By the way, regarding the Ukrainian war, do you see any specific cyber-related legislation activities, or at least the actual actions on state level? Did they change since the start of this nightmare?
Well, we had this from the policy level, the so-called Zeitenwende announcement that Germany will now more invest in its security in the broader sense. So there will be quite some money being poured into the in the army services, and quite a substantial sum of that is used for hardware, which also means that hardware will be more secure than before. Not like, not in the sense that you would expect IT security, but definitely an important improval of the hardware that's used, for example, for communications. But the Department of Homeland Security or Ministry of Interior here in Germany was basically not included in that big budget. So then there were discussions about they are getting their own budget for improving cybersecurity and getting that across the finishing line right now. So I'm a bit hesitant to call it a big step because we still have to see where the money will be allocated, what it will be used for. But the Russian war against Ukraine is definitely something that triggered a fundamental additional investment and funding in the broader topic of cyber security and cyber defense and everything that goes around with it.
Okay, to me it seems a progress. I know how states or federal states are working. It's really time consuming, and regarding that I think it's still impressive which is going on. So there was a huge discussion regarding the state security and the usual hackbacks. So the active attack on the servers, let's say so, of the attackers or the networks of the attackers. I think you pretty often say your opinion on this. Would you share your opinion on hackbacks? Are they unavoidable, or what's the future of this in your opinion?
I think from the German perspective, we have been discussing it for 5 years, and we're now talking about a constitutional change without really knowing what we're talking about. So let me just quickly quote you my definition, what I understand from it, and then what does it mean. Thanks. So active cyber defense, we have defined it as one or more technical measures implemented by an individual state or collectively, carried out or mandated by a government entity with the goal to neutralize and or mitigate the impact of and or attribute technically a specific ongoing malicious cyber operation or campaign. And that's a very broad thing, right? So in general, there's a lot of things that go in there which might make sense, and then there's a lot of things that don't make sense at all. And that's the part where you go into the hackback field. A hackback, in my opinion, is something where you're outside your own jurisdiction, deploy intrusive cyber operations to try to stop a cyber operation or do attribution of a cyber operation. Now, for attributional purposes, that might at some point work, but the reason why we're discussing hackbacks and active cyber defense is from the perspective of making us more secure, right? And all of these things don't make us more secure. They help us maybe to find who's behind an operation, but what do we do with that knowledge? And they might help us to get some retribution, right? Like we're going to delete your computers, which, then you buy new computers and set them up new, or you just set up your old computers new. You're not increasing your own security by doing most of these measures. So I think our focus should be more on improving the resilience of our crucial and important IT infrastructures, rather than looking for this new powers for our security agencies to once in a while case be able to stop one cyber operation which is malicious. I think we should focus more on become more resilient, because resilience has the advantage that you're protecting against everything, not only intelligence agencies but also cyber criminals and catastrophes. If you're resilient, you have backups, you have decentralized data points and everything. If there's a flooding or a hurricane or whatever, and your main data IT infrastructure gets destroyed, you still have a backup and everything. And if you're looking at this from that angle, I think you get more bang for the buck when you actually focus on resilience other than active cyber defense or hackback operations, which might in edge cases work, but in general, they're not improving the overall security of your country, and they're using up resources that we don't have a lot of, which is, of course, educated IT staff in our government entities.
I think it's an important aspect also. I mean, resilience, and also because of an outage in the electricity network has a much higher probability than, for example, before a year and now. So we should take it more into consideration that it will happen. And regarding most of our regulations, it either helps and it even supports us if we take them serious and not just create papers and papers for operations. But sorry to try to simplify your opinion, but you say that these kind of hackbacks or attacking you are attackers, in your opinion, it does not belong to the right things to do. So it should not be done even on EU, so European Union level. But what else could do the European Union to support the states, the member states? I mean,
Greg, I think you had a great example. To oversimplify it, if the Russians are switching off the lights in Berlin, I don't want to switch off the lights in Moscow. I want the lights in Berlin to go up as fast as possible. And I think this shows you where we should be going. And not only as Germany, but as the European Union. So we should be focusing on getting our important infrastructures back operational as fast as possible in the event of an adverse cyber operation or whatever. And the European Union, with the Network and Information Security Directive, with the Cyberesilience Act, and so on and so forth, goes in the right direction of doing that. I don't think the European Union should focus on offensive cyber operation capabilities, on hackback or active cyber defense operations that are intrusive and taking place in foreign networks. This is all, that sounds great. You know, when you want to have like this defensive posture, we are strong posture, but it doesn't help us the way other things help us. Like one example, if you want to do, after like the war started, of course, everyone was like, okay, what can we do proactively? We don't always want to just wait for someone to come and then protect and then make it operational again if it fails. We want to do proactive. To those people, I say, well, then you look at threat hunting teams. Then you start building your threat hunting teams. You go in your important and crucial IT infrastructures and you look if there's already backdoors, if there's already advanced persistent threat groups that have access to those networks, and you kick them out. You make sure that they don't have access anymore. You can be proactive with that. We have enough important IT infrastructures where you can deploy these threat hunting teams. That is something we should do.
This is an interesting aspect. You're right. I really like this example as well. And also we do it, but even with large enterprises, we face it pretty rarely. I mean active hunting in this case, but we encourage people to do that. We can do proactive exercises like with a purple teaming exercise or any kind of red teaming activities. So testing our own capabilities. And I guess, I don't know if you agree on that or with me, that in the cyber world, we are more the part of the defense, I mean the private sector as well, than in the physical warfare, let's say. So critical infrastructures, every company can be a target very easily, and the infiltration is also easier than in the spyware world.
No, I definitely agree. I mean, it's a bit dissimilar, because what we see is like, okay, we have the war in Ukraine going on, right? But apart from the war in Ukraine, where there are cyber operations being deployed or cyber warfare, you have constant cyber operations, either criminal or for intelligence nature, outside of wars. And they are affecting the industry, because the industry is running the majority of all IT infrastructures everywhere. So we are in this, you call it Wild Wild West. I think there's a lot of regulations now and a lot of sheriff there, so it's not so wild anymore as it was maybe before. But it is constant threats coming everywhere, and the industry is a very lucrative target. Criminals are making their living out of it, and intelligence agencies are succeeding with their objectives when they compromise IT infrastructure of the private sector. So the private sector definitely plays an important role in the entire cybersecurity field. And that is independent from if there's an active war or not. That is true. But we have been discussing the role of private industry for a long time. The Americans, for example, for years now discussed active cyber defense, but not as something that the government should do, because they are allowed, or they are doing it already. But if private companies should actually be allowed to hack back because their data gets stolen. That's a completely different perspective than we have here, at least right now. But it shows you how big of a role the industry plays, no matter if you agree or not. Of course, I don't agree, but anyway.
Yes, with this aspect, I mean, when the US approach, I don't agree as well, but the importance of the private sector definitely. If we just take into consideration the resources, what we all lack, we need to share these kind of resources and knowledge what we have both in the state and the private sector. And if they can or we can help each other, then it will be definitely more efficient and effective also. So regarding the European Union's actions, we are pretty satisfied. I think the current regulations are really up to date. So complying with that will help a lot on state levels as well. So member state level, what do you think? How much time will it take until most of the member states will be able to localize the regulations, because it's just a directive at the moment? So do you have an assumption?
I have no idea. Honestly, Greg, I can't even give you a ballpark number. I mean, we're talking about them being, put into national law, and then that's not the end of it. The end of it is then how much time will be given to the companies to actually implement it, and then them actually implementing it and not just getting fancy certifications that they have. A couple of years.
Yeah, definitely a couple of years. The question is, I think, is it 2 or is it 7? I can imagine both on my side, because as you said, you have to set up the local legislation, but also the control mechanisms, organizations with manpower who is able to control it very strictly, but also supportively. So I think something between 2 and 5 years, hopefully a bit quicker. But what I like with the new directives, that we can also use them as standards, like the NIST cybersecurity framework. So we could and we should use it, I think, in my opinion, in Europe as a standard or a basic of the compliance of cybersecurity, within cybersecurity.
No, I totally agree, and I think the Cyber Resilience Act has the potential to have even more impact, because similar to the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, the Cyber Resilience Act will at some point, make it impossible to sell technology that is not up to the security by design standard of that act into the European Union and sell it there. And I think that may have a great effect based on the economy that the European Union can leverage. And that's something we should get our eyes peeled on, and should have a look of how it develops.
Okay, then it also sounds pretty positive. It's always nice to hear some new positive initiatives within EU, definitely. So let's summarize with this positive approach. This podcast. I am really grateful that you were with us today. I cannot swear that I will not invite you again, because I enjoy these talks very much. So I hope you will be open for our next discussion sooner or later. So thank you very much, Sven, and have a nice day.
Greg, thank you for having me, and I'm sure coming again to your show. I really enjoyed. You asked the right questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. See you.